How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Gangi. Welcome to another episode of Tier Talk. Guys, we're going to talk about the manipulation of narratives. I mean, we're really focused right now on TMZ, but we're seeing it again with the Nick Reiner case. We've seen it with the Celeste Rivas case. We've seen it with the Mark Sanchez case. It just gets to be a bit frustrating because most people sadly see some of these outlets as trusted, but in the end, they are trying to either control or maintain a narrative. And watch how the narrative shifts when high-priced defense lawyers get involved in these cases. And I think that's the pattern I have been seeing. And more particularly with TMZ, at the very beginning, they will sensationalize a story, kind of probably be the most objective reporting they'll give it at that time, is usually at the very beginning, because most of their information is coming from people that are on the scene. So let's say in the Reiner case, maybe some police off the record, maybe some EMTs, maybe some neighbors, but then eventually when the person being accused gets a high paid defense lawyer, I think the sources then shift, and the sources tend to become those that are with the defense, let's just say. And that's another thing about these just non-specific sources. I think, to be honest with you, the PR that the media gives these cases may usually benefit the case for the defense. And that's what we're going to discuss today. I have a few questions I want to toss to Russ. Also, I just covered this before in another video, but we want to expand on it a little bit more. And that's why I was hoping Russ could join in on today's discussion. So what's up, Russ? You mind introducing yourself?
Sure. My name is Russ Hamilton. I'm a former and now retired sergeant from California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. Started my career all the way back in the 80s at San Quentin State Prison. From there, I ended up retiring, but then I went to work as a senior juvenile correctional officer. I currently work for a company now where we do reentry and rehabilitation work for a local county jail, where I have a case management load, and for a local probation department. I'm also the author of a book that I'm very proud of, which is called Killing Complacency, and you can find that in Amazon. And let's see, what else? I got a lot of other things going on. I also have some articles written now for Corrections One, and I think that about wraps it up.
And then, guys, don't forget, if you like the content, you can always buy us a cup of coffee. We have the link to that in the description. Mine's right above Russ's, and we also have it on our YouTube channel. I also have books on the market as well. If you guys get a chance, or on Amazon. Big seller is Inmate Manipulation Decoded. But Russ, the first question I want to discuss is the arc of coverage. So when you follow coverage in cases like this, so the Reiner case, the Celeste Rivas Hernandez case, Mark Sanchez, do you notice common arcs once a high-profile defense attorney gets involved?
Well, I don't think that that's the driving force. I think that what you have is you have an attorney get involved, and the real driving force is clicks. What basically happens is outlets like TMZ and any other one is they put headlines out, and the headlines don't even tell the story that they have within their own framework. And then oftentimes, even what's within their own framework is kind of tweaked. It's not necessarily true. It's worked to try and, get the most bang for the buck. And it's just usually over the top. And so I don't know that necessarily that it's just about the attorneys. Those attorneys, sometimes they want a lot of attention brought to the case. Sometimes they don't. I think it's kind of a mixed bag for them. But anything that they can get that's going to influence the jury pool, say with some rumor, any rumor that tends to point one direction, they want that to stick in people's heads, because they're going to hopefully pick those people out and get a better jury for themselves. I think sometimes it works out. O.J. Simpson. Sometimes it doesn't. Scott Peterson.
Yeah, and guys, I agree with us. I think like in the cases I have seen, it's just the timing. Blair Burke comes in, the narrative for the Celeste Rivas case starts to change. In this case here, Alan Jackson comes in for the Reiner case, and now it's all about schizophrenia, mixed medication, police, um, LAPD not doing a proper warrant when they search the hotel. You start to believe that a lot of the stuff that they're putting out there becomes strategy for the defense. And it's unique because they also know at this time, Russ, that the prosecution side's probably going to be quiet because there's an investigation on here. I mean, you see it in the Celeste Rivas Hernandez case, right? They go to the grand jury, things become very quiet. Only people that are in a need to know are the ones that are in a need to know. The public just has to sit and wait, but the media, especially TMZ, they got to get those answers. They got to figure out what's going on because they set a narrative in motion. And I think when things go quiet and things go dark, they take advantage of those moments of ambiguity and they create mystery, uncertainty. And you're right. I think a big part of that is obviously for clickbaits, but if they do have a connection to that lawyer, most of the stuff that they're providing really truly does benefit the other side. I mean, would you agree?
Yeah. Well, here's what I would say is both sides are going to work to do what they can do. I would say that for the most part, the prosecution is a little bit more hamstrung by due process and presumption of innocence. But that doesn't mean that they're totally ill-equipped. They can go out there. They can do things. They can do things with respect to delivering the case that they have at the time through some. Obviously, they're not as open as perhaps the defense can be, but they can go in there and they can do things to keep the case in the eye of the public in a better light for them. So I don't know that it's all this, and I think that sometimes though the way that things are played, I think that the defense in a lot of cases can actually alienate a potential jury pool, or at least alienate the public from the case, because I think everybody kind of has a foregone conclusion, and maybe this is just me projecting, that they're all shysters.
Yeah, I would like to think so, but I'll be honest with you, Russ. In some cases, the influence tends to be greater when you have more exposure, even if it's something you don't agree with or not. Because I even find myself, when you're not getting information from the one side, you take the information that comes your way. So I've slowed down on that, obviously, because that's how they get you. They get you through frequency and availability, where the prosecution side is not going to be so frequent. For obvious reasons, they're not going to be so available. So we have this thirst for knowledge. And sometimes we have to the key is you have to wait. But I think, again, a majority of the public, they may have an idea of what's coming their way. But, if it just keeps on coming their way and there's no counter influence, I think we all start to become susceptible to what's being tossed in front of us. And I think it is a very calculated game by the media. And I think you mentioned it perfectly on another show that we did, where it's an effort to gain control or maintain control. But I want to mention something, and I have to agree with you, Russ. You can also see when there's desperation by the media, when they start sending out too much. So like I get strategic placement, a little slow, a little subtle, just enough to kind of awaken interest and make sure you got enough red herrings there. But like in certain cases I saw with Celeste Rivas Hernandez, I'm starting to see with the Reiner case, they're throwing out too much, and either it's to control a narrative or it's to get the clicks, but it's definitely not for the right reasons. Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean that. Well, we know what the motivational drivers are. The motivational drivers of the media spotlight, especially, it's not pure like the driven snow. It's more like just any bit of shit that they can throw to the wall that will stick. That's what they want, because they are driven by clicks. They're driven by ad revenue. They want to drive the numbers up. In the old days, it used to be all about the Nielsen ratings. And so that's what they have. That is their desire. That is their focus. Nothing here screams, oh, we just want justice. None of that is involved.
Yeah. And guys, just as a side note, we got a couple of videos up here that we posted a couple of days ago that could use some views if you guys are interested in following all of our content, because we do break off into different cases. I would really love for you guys to watch the coverage we did on the DoorDash individual, the person that sprayed the Arby's delivery with OC. And then we also did a breakdown of the Walmart loss and prevention incident where the person being accused pulled out a gun. It's a great breakdown. We've done a few videos on that. I just wanted to toss it out as a reminder, trying to get those views and the subscriber count up, because if I'm not in that algorithm, I'm not getting the followers. And what gets me upset is you see a lot of people, they run into what's trending and they just put it out there, like a lot of the people that are covering the stuff that we do, the true crime stuff. And they really, I think they've lost a lot of the integrity in their own reporting. They just get caught into the sensationalism as well. And there's people that are following them blindly. And what happens here is they trust the source. And if that source starts running with these crazy narratives, sadly, we wind up losing the truth that matters the most in these investigations. Now, this goes to the next question, Russ. Basically when information shifts. So early on, information tends to come from witnesses or law enforcement. Later, we start hearing more about, in this case, for the Reiner case, mental health or other mitigating factors. I think in this case, it talked about his prescription meds, the stay he had at rehab. In the Celeste Rivas case was tough because they started kind of pointing the finger at her as being a runaway and a bad family. And Mark Sanchez, they painted him as a victim eventually. How do you, in your opinion, how does this shift usually happen?
It's all it is if you compartmentalize a story and you can chop it down into 50 different chunks of information that you can do 50 stories on, you're better off than if you can only do 5 stories or 3 stories on it. And so they get into, all of this stuff. And initially, they throw things out there. Oh, this person, Sanchez, for instance, was the victim. And oh, no, now he's not the victim. And now this other guy, he's the victim. And so they do this with callous disregard for the truth, callous disregard for the facts, callous disregard for the actual victim in almost every case. In almost every case, they never give the victims the type of process that they're willing to give to the hoodlums, to the crooks, to the real criminals. And even if they talk about the victims in in a respectful way and say things about it, they really don't care. They just want the story to take the tallest ballistic arc that it can, so that they can get the most number of clicks, the most number of ad revenue, all of that.
Yeah, I think I'm starting, as I've been watching, doing the true crime and really trying to figure out how this whole system works. I mean, I don't want to make an allegation like I believe sometimes these defense attorneys may pay for coverage. I don't know. I really can't prove that. But with that said, I mean, it really is coincidental how much the narrative can shift. It really does. It really, in my mind, is mind blowing. I mean, my biggest wake up call was when we were covering the Celeste Rivas Hernandez case, and as soon as that lady Blair Burke came on, or came as the lawyer, man, everything went towards the victim as being the one to blame, and I got so sickening. I got so sick from that. I wasn't expecting that in any. I just was not expecting that. And people had said, well, this is what TMZ does. This is what they do. So a lot of people were already familiar with TMZ's coverage. A lot of them were upset about something that happened with the Charlie Kirk incident. I wasn't too familiar with that, but they said that should have been enough to take TMZ out. But then here they are again. And I said, well, let me look into this. And as I started getting their information, I started to see that really they truly do embellish. I mean, to the point where I you know what? There's an ounce of truth sometimes in what they say, just a small little ounce. And it's done so well where it causes people to reflect and maybe doubt to some extent. But a lot of us are not in that absolute, because there's still that hint of truth. So it's very well crafted to the point where you question, you don't outright deny the relevance or deny the truth, but rather you doubt it, which I think is a lesser form of like, for me, I'm starting to see what they're about, and I'm very aggressive in, nope, this is wrong. But if someone's not as aggressive as I am, it's enough to doubt to some extent, but there's also just that hint of truth that keeps people holding on. Would you agree with that, Russ? It's pretty well crafted.
Yeah, but it's also just cookie cutter. They do the same thing in the same manner every single time. It's predictable.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's another thing too. And that's kind of the pattern that we're seeing. Now, again, we kind of talked on this before, but just to reiterate, when outlets use phrases like sources with direct knowledge, who typically has access to things like diagnosis, medication changes, or treatment history? Now, here's the funny thing now. So I was watching Two Angry Men, and it's tough for me to watch this guy Harvey and them, because he keeps on just saying, and my sources and people connected to the investigate, whatever, and all this other stuff. And then someone had mentioned HIPAA when it comes to the knowledge of someone's medical history. So who would have access to that? Most likely the lawyers. The defense lawyers would probably have easier access to that. I'm not saying the prosecution side wouldn't have access to that, but we would expect them to be a little bit more quiet. So we would think that, the people that have direct access to that would probably be the defense team. And this is what I started to realize. Maybe a lot of the times when they say that these are sources that are close to the investigation or all this other stuff, what their sources really are, it could be people that are related to the defense. And they know they don't want to say that because they don't want to create like some type of biased narrative, but they make it look like the sources are coming from the objective side of things. But I don't think they are, because as me and Russ also have been reviewing some of these cases, also with Denise and everything, I noticed some of the stuff that they put out there are usually some of the stuff that me, Russ, or Denise have talked about and what we would do if we were defending the aggressor. Because we do those dialogues. When someone gets arrested, we go through the process, and then we wind up breaking down the prosecution side, the defense side. And what the unique thing that happens is kind of like running parallel with our show. You start to see these narratives that come in play that me, Russ, and Denise will be like, wow, didn't we just discuss that? Isn't this just totally like what we thought the defense would run with? And then it just gets bombarded with that side of the narrative. So my thing is, I think when Harvey and them come on, they say they got a source connected to the investigation or a real influential source, blah, blah, blah. I think the sources usually relate to the side of the defense, at least for the cases that I'm familiar with. Because I know Russ, and you have to admit this, Russ, they love putting out generalities, including not just generalities in their statements, but also generalities in their resources or their sources. Now, again, if we were to do that as law enforcement, if we were to do that in general, we would lose all credibility. All credibility. They love to put generality in regards to sources, generality in regards to what happened, because it becomes harder to prove a generality. And for us, we want specifics. You said, this happened overnight. Well, what's the exact time? Or you said you spoke to a source who's connected to the investigation. My first question would be, how are they connected? I don't want to hear anything else from you until you can tell me how they're connected, because here's the biggest thing I think that we need to understand. the media or whatever's coming our way technically is only as good as the sources that they're coming from. And if you don't understand the sources that they're coming from, then the problem is you could be influenced into the wrong direction. Would you agree, Russ? Because there's a lot there.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, more of the same. It's just, this constant thing about, putting whatever they want out there. And, they have, sources. Well, what kind of sources? Well, high level sources. Well, what kind of high level sources? High level sources that are in a position to know. And the qualifiers just go on, and you never really are told what that means, and just how, problematic it becomes. You can make up any source that you want and not have to have it be real. And, sources are always the things that people say when they want to look like somehow they are more in the know than you are. And so, if I came on here and said, well, you know what, I have some sources and I really shouldn't reveal this, and then start spilling my guts about stupid stuff. It's a lie almost every time.
I love something that you said, Russ. I love when you said qualifier, because you know what's funny? I feel, again, just my opinion, Harvey Levin always gives you a qualifier. He'll say something, but he always gives a qualifier, because I think he knows the statement isn't that strong for him to stand up on, for him to stand on it on its own. Also, I believe he knows that maybe his credibility is sometimes in shot, is being taken a shot at. So he leans on these general, like you said, ambiguous sources that are like a giant qualifier. But here's the funny thing, Russ. Here's the funny thing. When you have an investigation and the objective authority in charge of the investigation gives you the facts, they don't lean on qualifiers. No. They just pretty much say, this is what it is. This is what happened. They don't weaken it up by trying to put a third-party qualifier to it. Would you agree?
Yeah. And, if, depending on how things shake out, like on the stand or something too, you can, knock all those out of there and prove whether something is demonstrably just bullshit or not. By, taking away, one of the qualifying words, all of the time. Well, what about these other times? Just whatever it is. And it's just, and this is why I despise lawyers in general and the media specifically.
Yeah, imagine, Russ, if I went to charge you for a crime, and you say, well, how do you know? I'm the police now, and you come up and say, well, how do you know I did it? Because I got an ambiguous source who knows you. Well, who is it? Don't worry about it, but I know they're a friend of yours. It's insane, and it's that garbage that they feed you, and people run with it. They run with it. And you know why, Russ, you said it before too. So as I'm doing this, I know a big part of it is they want to be the first to get the story. And I always knew that they want to get those clicks. I get it. But what I learned from doing true crime, and I think, Russ, you may have corrected me on this a little bit, but I remember I also said that they want to either control, or maybe you said no, really maintain the narrative, because the initial break of a story matters, because obviously I've seen enough where when someone breaks a story, the news that breaks, it's quick to say you heard it here first, and then the other sources that come in afterwards will always credit that original source. So you're assuming there's some level of ownership over that narrative. But what was that discussion we had last? Russ, did you say control or maintain? Or
I'm not sure exactly in what context that was. We've had a lot of discussions, but I just always see them. They want to make as big a circle as they can so that they can slice the most pieces of pie out of every situation, and that's what they do.
Yeah, maybe that's what we think. Because I one thing I learned here since covering the true crime stuff is that it's not just about be the first to get the story, because I used to say they would want to break the story first, and they send stuff out with no context. Basically, they put their own spin on the bullshit context later on. Even if the narrative starts going in the other direction, they'll fight to keep their context, which is what you see TMZ doing. So it's control and maintain.
I look a lot of times for what the 72-hour shift is. because they'll come out and something will be big and it'll be inflated. I go, before I say anything about that, maybe I'm going to let it simmer and stew for 72 hours. And then 72 hours later, it's been proven false.
Yeah.
Or it's proven to be something else entirely. At 72 hours, a good rule. You want to try and see whether or not something that, how much bullshit was in the recipe. 72 hours, let that thing simmer, see what happens.
Yeah, I do see that with other like I'm starting to kind of lean on that a little bit, but also Hidden True Crimes does. Some of them do wait, and it's like, oh, and here's the sad thing, guys. Sometimes we see their later coverage and think they're late to the game, but no, they're like what Russ said. They're waiting for some more facts before they start running with things. So the people that jump on it right now, you may be thirsty for that story, but I think you should follow the ones that may be a little later to the game because they've done a little bit more research and they're less careless with what's being put out there. I see that also with Grizzly True Crimes, another channel that waits a little bit longer. So, Russ, in the Nick Reiner case, the mental health discussion really picked up after Alan Jackson was brought in. That's the defense lawyer. So how much does timing matter when you're trying to understand why certain information surfaces when it does? I thought, again, it kind of touched on this, but it is, in some level, I feel like it's strategic.
Well, actually, though, is they don't have a lot of control over that because it's a much more well-known story because elements of this have been public knowledge on and off for a while now. So instantly, that's going to be the thing that comes out. We're certainly going to see more about what things are with regards to addiction problems that he may have had, and certainly about other facets of what was going on with his mental health, as far as whether he'd ever been placed in a mental hospital or not. I don't actually know, but those things are going to come out. I think in the end, it probably doesn't help him a great deal. Because that bar for the supposed insanity, which is really a legal distinction and not a medical one, it's really, really high, and I don't see them getting there. I think that what they're going to do is they're going to try and fold in a little bit of some sort of diminished capacity and try and get him to a point where at some point in the far future, he's going to be considered not a danger to others. And, that might kind of like be true depending on what we see, because I think this is actually going to come down to money and who was going to be in line. Supposedly, maybe they were designing a conservatorship for him, knowing that they're not going to be around forever. And that may have been triggering in some way. But again, that might just be something that the media is putting out there.
Yeah, and guys, me and Russ covered this. You can see this one right here, basically why the suicide smock. This basically is a discussion we posted on December 18th of every possible angle the defense could play, and then also what the prosecution would do. So we discussed it, but sadly that video, I don't understand, didn't get the views that it should, but that's a video that relates to what's being put on the media a day or two later. So we were ahead of that. And what me and Russ covered, I mean, we also talked about things that weren't yet discussed, including that moment when he came home after the party and what was going on. Was he premeditating, or was he furthering down the rabbit hole in his mental crisis? And I think that's a big part of what that discussion was going to be, or the discussion for insanity, because it's more about what happened in the moment. The defense is going to push for in the moment because that's where the ambiguity is. And the prosecution may kind of think of what happened before or after. So I think that's just, in my mind, it was a great dialogue. If you guys get a chance, I would highly recommend you guys check out that discussion. It's really a good discussion. It's by me and Russ. So now I have the next question. So I just got to wait for Russ to come back. It's going to be question 5, but hopefully, Russ is back. Okay, hold on. So now, Russ, there is also a pivot. So the article from TMZ that got me a while ago with Celeste Rivas was when they started talking about Celeste's home life, started blaming her for making the choices that she made when obviously she's just still a young kid. I saw this in the Reiner case too, where what really stood out to me was that after the mental health narrative, so we start seeing the mental health narrative, we start seeing the medication. Now they may be leaning away from him being an addict because they know that some people look at being an addict as a choice. You're choosing to put things in your system, so it doesn't minimize accountability. But what got to me a little bit about this one is when we saw coverage shift to claims about LAPD searching the hotel without a warrant. You know, it was an extreme pivot for me. And basically, I thought the coverage wasn't fair coverage. It just completely went with, like, these are the hints of how to minimize accountability for Reiner. And then all of a sudden, which I saw before, aggressively went towards, and this is what LAPD is doing wrong. It's the same pattern I've seen, again, even with the Celeste Rivas case. That pivot, I thought was rather extreme and just unwarranted. Forgive the pun. What's your thoughts on that, Russ?
Yeah, this is really, just the media clutching at straws, trying to generate a story that's absolutely meaningless. When you look at this, it's devoid of anything meaningful just on the face. He checked into the hotel room at like 4 a.m. in the morning, and his tenancy over the motel room doesn't last forever. It's a shortened thing. So over the next night and into the next day at checkout time, bing, that magic number hits. And so I think it was more than 20 hours had elapsed. And so that's what the Supreme Court decision says. I want to say it was Stoner versus somebody. But anyway, I don't see that they have anything to hold their hats up. Plus, they were advised allegedly by staff there that the staff had found blood, and so that the defense is probably going to try and file something. I think that they risked pissing off the judge though in that case, because this is pretty well settled law. And so what are they going to do? They're going to say, oh, they didn't have a search warrant, and say, well, there was no tenancy involved in it. They'd already been told by staff that there was blood on something in the room. So once they get to that point, then you get to a point that, well, we could throw this out, but because of the crime and everything else that happened, there would still be inevitable discovery. And so this is just one of those things, again, TMZ talking about stuff it doesn't know about, if that was TMZ. And but it's farcical on its face. They just want to blow things up. He didn't have unlimited tenancy in there. And so by everything that I've read, it appears to me that it was beyond checkout time.
And that's the key. So I even covered that in a video I just did, a short.
Oh, did you?
Here, let me show you something, Russ, real quick. It was a quick short. Let me show you this short, Russ, because I think that it's exactly what you said. And people did ask this question about the that search, so might as well answer it. I just looked up the Stoner one too, which was great. I appreciate that because I didn't have that information. Here, let me share this. Hold on one second. So, Russ,
you want me to go into that a little bit? It was Stoner versus California.
Yeah. Wait, hold on though. I want to show you something. But look, what I got here was I already have the information on the Stoner. It said, can hotel staff consent to a police search or a guest room? Short answer was no, but police cannot rely on hotel staff, clerks, managers, housekeeping to give consent to search a guest occupied hotel room. Only the guest or valid warrant can authorize the search. What happened in this case was police suspected Stoner of a robbery. Officers went to his hotel. Without a warrant, they asked the hotel clerk for permission to search his room. Clerk said yes. Police searched the room and seized evidence. What the Supreme Court said was the court ruled the search unconstitutional because a hotel room is treated like temporary home. Hotel employees do not have the authority to waive a guest's Fourth Amendment right. Police assumed the risk by searching without a warrant, and the evidence was suppressed. But why this case still matters is this case is cited constantly in hotel room searches, Airbnb, short-term rental cases, motel welfare checks, and media claims of warrantless searches to this. And it draws a bright legal line. Access does not equal authority. Just because staff can enter a room does not mean police can search it. But there's important clarification in where people get this confused. Stoner does not mean police can never enter a hotel room without a warrant. They can enter it if there are exigent circumstances, emergency, danger, destruction of evidence, the guest has checked out or been lawfully evicted, and they are responding to a limited purpose call, welfare check, or emergency. But once inside, police cannot exceed the scope of that purpose without a warrant. And why this comes up in this modern case, you'll often hear police searched a hotel room without a warrant. The legal question straight from Stoner is, did police go beyond why they were lawfully there? And that's what judges analyze later. So I wanted to
no tenancy. So if there's no tenancy, they're good.
Yeah, so I wanted to show you this, Russ. I kind of borrowed from TMZ headline claiming LAPD.
Meanwhile, Jack.
Here we go. Hey guys, a lot of people are asking about the TMZ headline claiming LAPD searched Nick Reiner's hotel room without a warrant. And here's the important part most headlines leave out. And again, we're learning this together. A hotel room is protected like a private residence, but only while the guest still has control of it. Once a guest checks out, abandons the room, or the hotel retakes possession, that expectation of privacy can change. If a hotel independently calls police, for example, housekeeping finds something concerning, there's a biohazard or a welfare or safety issue, officers can legally enter to respond to that call without a warrant. That doesn't automatically mean they're allowed to search. There's a big legal difference between entering a room and conducting a full search. Police can respond to the hotel's call, secure the area, and observe what's in plain view. But to start opening drawers, collecting evidence, or processing the room like a crime scene, they typically need a warrant. So the real legal question isn't, did police go in without a warrant? It's, did they go beyond why they were there? And that's not decided by TMZ headlines. It's decided later by a judge based on very specific facts we don't have yet. Who called police, whether the room was still under the guest's control, and what officers actually did once inside. Right now, there's no ruling, no suppression, and no finding of illegality. Just a potential defense argument being floated early. That's why it's important to separate legal process from media narrative and to be cautious when the headlines turn unresolved legal questions into conclusions. I just wanted to answer that. I didn't get a chance to answer that. And then, Russ, that kind of leads into my next question for you. As of now, there's no suppression motion, no judge ruling, no official LAPD statement, just headlines. So how often do you see procedural issues get debated in the media before they're actually litigated?
Oh yeah, in this case, I don't doubt that they will consider filing something about it. But like I say, I don't think they want to ruffle the feathers of a judge that's going to go, are you really going to put us through the motions of this when it's something that is so, well founded within the law, and something that's, it has historical precedent, at least all the way back to 1964. I think that they may just leave that alone, but who knows? Sometimes these allegedly, high power attorneys and stuff, they're high power because they just want to try and do everything rather than whatever the smartest thing is. And I really don't see them in the light that some people do.
Well, you know what? You make a good point, Russ. I want to show you the media here too. So TMZ, when they wrote about this, what they do is look at, I want you to pay careful attention, guys, from the outside. I want you to listen for the headline. That's what grabs you. Listen to the first bulk of it, because that's what they know most people may read. They never read the final closing. And usually the final closing is where all their liability is. It really is. They sensationalize everything through the headline, through the front, but then they say at the very end, but look. And you know what's funny about this, Russ? Inmates do the same thing sometimes. what they'll do is they'll write something at the very end. They'll put like a Priya, and it's like if you don't read the whole thing, you miss out. And they do it on purpose. They try to make it look like it's going this way, and then all of a sudden they make an allegation on the other at the bitter end of it, which could even be unrelated to their initial concern. So this is the title: Nick Reiner, LAPD searched hotel room without search warrant. Boom. That's what's in your face right there, as you can see. Then they're very quick in their article. So LAPD searched a hotel room when Nick Reiner checked in around the time his parents were murdered. And TMZ has been told the police did not have a search warrant. Harvey explains, and look at the way they said that. That's interesting. I just realized that. Nick Reiner checked in around the time his parents were murdered. What are they saying there? Like that he couldn't have been there when the murder took place? That's pretty unique writing there, right? LAPD searched a hotel room where Nick Reiner checked in around the time his parents were murdered. And TMZ has been told the police did not have a search warrant. By who? I'm assuming that would be the defense, right? I'm assuming. Harvey explains during the latest episode of Two Angry Men podcast what happened at around 1 a.m. Monday when an LAPD detective showed up at the Pierside Santa Monica Hotel. Sources with direct knowledge tell TMZ the detective told the front desk clerk he was looking for a guest named Nick Reiner. The detective told the clerk he was there for a welfare check, but he also told the clerk he was concerned Reiner disposed of a weapon and used the room to clean and dispose of evidence in a violent crime. By the way, the source here, sources with direct knowledge. Who? Could it be the defense team? The clerk accompanied the detective to room 207, but it had been cleaned hours before by a hotel housekeeper who were told found blood in the shower and on the bedsheet. Now, that's a unique little paragraph there, because if they note that the housekeeper cleaned it already, are they noting tampering with evidence? Are they trying to say that the crime scene, I guess if it wasn't secured, that there could be a concern if you find anything there later because there was already access to that room? Our sources say the detective never presented a search warrant to the clerk, and another source connected to the case tells TMZ there's no evidence police obtained a warrant. Could be same source, could be different sources, but from that same, the defense side. Now here's the rub. If there were just a welfare check, because they now here's the funny thing. Look, guys, this is funny. They know that people read it that are educated will have an argument, and they'll do what Russ just said and said, well, wait a second, guys. They may not need a warrant if they went there on these reasons. So if you notice when they say, now here's the rub, it makes it sound like they're preparing to defend as opposed to reporting something objectively. What am I saying? What I'm saying makes sense, right, Russ? It looks like they're already preparing as if they're defense attorneys to go against someone like you or me who would have gave a different perspective in an effort to be objective. Because it goes, now here's the rub. If this were just a welfare check, a warrant would ordinarily not be necessary. But if the real motivation was to look for evidence connected to a crime, then a warrant would be required. We're told this is already on the radar of Nick's team. If any evidence was recovered in the room that morning, the defense would almost certainly argue it would be inadmissible.
Wrong. Yeah, that's completely wrong. Two things can be true at the same time. So when you look at the fact that they knew that a violent crime had occurred, they knew that potentially that he might have done it, but what if he was also a target of the criminals? So it doesn't have to be one or the other. The part to get beyond the search warrant only has to be the welfare check, and then everything beyond that would have come in under what he could have seen. Or if he found Nick there and arrested him. I don't know if they had probable cause or a warrant at that time, but I'm saying if that happened, they can still secure the scene and come back with a warrant. But they didn't even have to do that because there was no tenancy involved. They didn't know where he might be. Plus, once again, these people that had cleaned the shower out and whatever, they then told the police before the officer got up there, hey, yeah, there was some blood and stuff up there. Well, guess what? That kind of gives them probable cause right then and there. And because they had already cleaned the room, once again proving that tenancy did not exist. So this is just TMZ talking at its ass.
Yeah, I agree. I'm curious though, and it hasn't been said clear. Was this ever a crime scene? I can't find that anywhere. I don't think they ever noted that.
It can't be a crime scene until they establish that it is. And so what they're gonna do is they probably, this is just my guess, they probably went in there, looked around, maybe they saw some blood, maybe they didn't, or whatever. But based on what the maids or whoever cleaned it out told them, then yeah, they're going to come in there and they're going to take some samples from the shower drain and do some things like that. And that ought to be really concerning to Nick, because I'm sure that, that blood that they saw didn't come from anywhere else but where he was at. And where he was at was probably, where, at his parents'. So this is just much ado about nothing, in my opinion.
And remember, TMZ reported as if it was a bloodbath. It may not even be, but that's true. But again, there's part of their timeline that we still have yet to figure out. And the last,
I want to say something else. There's zero chance that whoever showed up at that hotel didn't go, oh, okay, well, this is something else I need to know. Hey, where's your trash bin at? And so they would have gone out there. And so if she had soiled some rags and some blood, you can be sure that they got that. Is it going to be the best damn evidence ever? No. Is it going to be circumstantial and very damning? Yes. Yes, it is.
And you made a good point, because once it goes into the hotel trash, they still need a warrant, but the hotel could approve it at that point, right?
Oh, the hotel is not going to tell them no. The hotel wants to get things back up and going. So you know that they're going to be cooperative. There's no reason for them not to cooperate at that point. And so I will bet that they got meaningful evidence both from the hotel room and from the trash.
Right now, I got two more questions, Russ. So what effect does that have when coverage moves from evidence to the police may have messed this up before the facts are tested? I want to mention something first. So what I've learned in my career in corrections, and I see it a lot now playing out in defense, because I think that's where the inmates kind of get it from, is when the evidence is so damning against them, the first thing that they'll try to do is attack credibility. If the attack and the credibility doesn't work, then they either will mess with due process. So that also relates to credibility to some extent, but also more related to the procedure, hoping that things can get thrown out on a technicality, which really has nothing to do with guilt or innocence, but rather a procedure wasn't followed. So you could still have a guilty person go free, all because you were found not guilty. Could be a due process concern, or what we see here, minimizing or blaming, because we see a mixture of both, right? We see minimizing in regards to his mental health, maybe at some level his addictions at first, or blaming, oh, he was given the wrong medication, or some people even going against the Reiner family. I've heard crazy stories which I don't think are true, that he was sexually assaulted. So the narratives get tossed out there, again, create confusion when the road is probably just straight. But Russ, I'm sure you're familiar with this, right? When the coverage goes from evidence to what the police have messed up on before the facts are even tested.
Well, yeah, I think the main thing that you got to look at is the instant the lawyers start talking about the substances, the mental health aspect, that they're already going down the road to this is not going to be about a not guilty plea. This is going to be a guilty plus feature of our defense. Because the instant that they try and bring that into it, they have to abandon that whole not guilty thing. So what you're likely to see from that point forward then is just going to be about, battling for everything else. Now, if they want to go the road not guilty by reasonable doubt, then they're going to be much more limited by what they can put out there on the stand. They can't say, they can't say that, you know what, our client is not guilty. He did not do this crime. But you know what, he may have done the crime because, you know, he's crazy as a loon. So they can't, you know, put those two things out there side by side. So I think that there's going to probably be at some point some type of a plea or a decision, because I think that with what they have so far, the amount of evidence is going to be pretty overwhelming. You know, who knows what he might have already said that might be pretty damning. But I don't think that this is going to turn into a whodunit.
No, I don't think so either. I think they're going to take onus of it, but then it's a matter of minimizing whatever the sentencing. I think that's going to be what's going to wind up happening. I agree. I don't think anybody's going to challenge the fact he did it or not. I think they're going to focus on compassion. He's someone going through a mental health crisis. And I think, you know, the question is going to be, is we know he did it, but was he himself? And the last question I got, Russ, is when people look at the progression, mental illness, medication issues, then a warrantless search claim, what's the best way for them to interpret that without jumping to conclusions?
The best way is to actually have knowledge about how things work. You know, and to understand who the audience is that's supposed to be receiving something that's said like that, and the nature of the entity that is saying it in the first place. So the instant that you hear a journalist or predominant media cultist say something, you should immediately take it with a grain of salt. You should immediately be suspicious, and you should be thinking in terms of who is this aimed at? What is the audience? Is it the jury pool? Kind of, but really with the predominant media cultists, they really just want clicks. So they'll say anything and everything. And then where is it coming from? Well, maybe if they're quoting something from the defense attorney, then yeah, maybe they're trying to, you know, taint the jury pool. You know, they want to get that first rock solid thought in there, you know, that first moment of doubt, because whatever lodges there has to be dislodged by whatever happens at trial, and maybe it'll stick. So, and then beyond that, if you understand a little bit of case law, like in this, earlier, I talked about a concept called inevitable discovery. And so inevitable discovery is kind of like the antithesis of fruit of the poisonous tree. Not exactly, but kind of. And so with inevitable discovery, you can say something to the effect of, well, yeah, they didn't have a search warrant, but no matter what else happened, this would have been found out anyway. That's kind of the gist of it. And so with regards to what happened in the hotel room, whatever happened there was going to be found out anyway. But in this case, since there was no tenancy, you don't even have to take it that far. Everything that happened beyond tenancy is fair game. And as long as the hotel signed off on it and there's every expectation that they did, that's where it's going to lie.
Yeah, Russ, that's interesting, because I heard of that. So the biggest concern you have, right, with that is if something's discovered at the very beginning that's not properly discovered, and it leads into all these other things, then unfortunately, what led to the subsequent discoveries, if that wasn't done correctly, then it could cause a concern with everything else. But you mentioned something too that matters. Would this have been discovered otherwise? I've never heard that played out. How does that work? Because that's a little different.
The exact case law escapes me right now, but there are some things on it. Generally, let's see if I can remember some of the rules that apply to it. Whatever discovery that might have been thrown out with regards to that whole fruit of the poisonous tree, everything between what let's say the police did wrong and the discovery of whatever it is that's a damning piece of evidence, as long as they didn't like break the law. Absolutely. They kind of, messed up on their policy or their procedure, or they didn't know or didn't understand something. You can fix that as long as that hasn't been done by this concept of inevitable discovery, which just kind of means, hey, you know what? They would have got from point A to point B, or let's say from point A to point C without point B anyway. And point B is where they messed up. Okay. But you can just like take that out, and they have to show, usually this is in a hearing before the judge, that they would have got to that point anyway. And there's a lot of nuance and stuff like that in it. It's just kind of one of those things that sometimes you can rehabilitate the crime scene. If I were going to put it in terms that people might understand, is that sometimes you get that second shot to show, hey, we would have got this piece of evidence anyway.
Yeah, I'm reading it now. So even if police made a mistake, illegal entry, improper search, the evidence may still be allowed if prosecutors can prove the evidence would have been discovered through lawful means anyway. So what the court requires is, under U.S. Supreme Court precedent, the prosecution must show by a preponderance of the evidence that a lawful investigation path already existed, that path was actively underway or clearly inevitable, and the discovery would have happened without relying on the illegal search. That this is not speculation. Judges require specific, concrete facts. So what does count as inevitable? Examples courts commonly accept is officers already drafting or executing a search warrant. A crime scene was about to be lawfully processed. A suspect was being lawfully arrested, and the evidence would have been found during booking. A routine inventory search was required by policy, and independent witnesses or surveillance were already leading to the same evidence. What does not count is these arguments usually fail. If we could have gotten a warrant, we probably would have found it. It was obvious something illegal was happening, or the evidence was just sitting there. Courts reject hindsight justification. So how does this work with the hotel room? This comes up constantly after warrantless hotel entries. The defense argument would be the search violated the Fourth Amendment, but the prosecution's response would be, even if the entry was improper, a warrant was already in progress and the evidence would have been found lawfully within hours. Judges then ask, was a warrant actually being pursued? Were officers already securing the scene properly? Did the illegal search speed up or replace lawful steps? So the key that the judge would focus on is, did the illegal search create the discovery or merely accelerate it? If police shortcuts the process, inevitable discovery may fail. If discovery was truly unavoidable, the evidence often stays in. And why does this matter? Against media headlines is evidence. Headlines love evidence could be thrown out due to illegal search. But the reality is, many high-profile cases survive suppression fights. Courts frequently admit evidence under inevitable discovery, and the public rarely uses the suppression hearing nuance. So inevitable discovery is not a free pass for bad police work, but it does prevent cases from collapsing when evidence was going to be lawfully found anyway. So basically, I assume that's a good argument. I think that they were probably going to be in the process of getting a warrant for that anyway, if needed. If that was, all the blood and all that stuff was there, and they know he was there, that would extend the crime, right? Extend the crime scene.
Yeah, and there's if you go back, I just looked it up real quick. One of the big ones was Murray v. United States. DEA went into a warehouse illegally. They left without disturbing anything. They didn't seize any evidence. And then they applied for a search warrant without mentioning the illegal entry in the affidavit. The warrant was based solely on information obtained before the illegal entry. The warrant was issued. The problem was the initial entry violated the Fourth Amendment, but they got back around to it basically by saying, hey, we didn't use that. And because we applied for the search warrant without mentioning that, the search warrant is still good. So we would have discovered it anyway. So that's one of them. And there's others. Oops.
That's why we do the show, Russ. We do it because we can learn something. Because I said LAPD can legally defend a warrantless search, but only under specific, well-defined doctrines, and judges scrutinize this closely. So a warrantless entry search is presumed unconstitutional if the burden then shifts to police prosecutors to justify it. They usually rely on four main defenses. Emergency overrides warrant requirements. So LAPD can argue immediate danger to life, ongoing violence, risk of evidence destruction, and active suspect flight. Key limit: once the emergency ends, the search must stop unless a warrant is obtained. So the judge will ask, did officers do more than stabilize the situation? And then you have limited purpose entry, not a search, kind of what you talked on. Police may enter for a specific reason: welfare check, hotel management call, medical emergency, safety sweep. Important distinction: entry does not equal search. They may secure people, observe plain view evidence. They may not open drawers, search luggage, process the room as a crime scene. This is where many cases rise or fall. And then the plain view doctrine is evidence is admissible if officers are lawfully present, evidence is immediately apparent, and officers do not manipulate objects to see it. If LAPD can show they didn't exceed their lawful presence, this defense often succeeds. And the inevitable discovery backstop defense is, even if a judge finds the entry improper, LAPD may argue the evidence would have been discovered anyway through lawful means. This works only if a warrant was already being pursued or a lawful investigative path was actively underway. Again, we could have gotten a warrant is not enough. We're already drafting one can be. What LAPD cannot defend is these arguments almost always fail if hotel staff let us in. That's barred from what Russ said before, the Stoner versus California. It looks suspicious. We didn't want to wait, or we were already inside, so we kept going. Courts are very clear. Convenience is not legality. So again, the question that the judge actually decides is not, did police go in without a warrant, but did police go beyond why they were lawfully there? That single question decides suppression. Here. And so, yes, LAPD can defend a warrantless entry if there was a real emergency or the entry stayed within limited lawful scope or the evidence would have been found anyway. If they cross the line, evidence can be suppressed, but the case doesn't automatically collapse. Now, where was that in TMZ's article?
Yeah, and the other one, not mentioned in that blurb that you went there, is, of course, consent. And so in this case, the hotel, guess what? The hotel, motel, whatever it was, guess what? They were in a position to consent because there was no tenancy involved. Therefore, the motel room belonged to them, and therefore they could consent. So there it is.
Love it. Hey, Russ, anything you'd like to say in closing? It was a great dialogue.
Yep. You know what, people, just if you're interested in this stuff, man, just keep reading, and fill yourself in, and don't take what places like TMZ say, as the gospel. There's always counterpoints to a lot of things, and remember that they only want to they don't want to inform you. They want to make you a customer of whoever they're selling their ad time to. So that is what it is, and that's the way it's always going to be with those kind of people.
Yeah, and I will say, guys, for me, I agree with Russ. I really don't. I kind of take it with a grain of salt, but I do like to see where they're pointing. Just to be honest with you, again, there's always that ounce of truth. So I usually try to see where that ounce of truth is and try to see where they're pointing, and then try to be objective in what I'm trying to learn, and don't just try to get caught in the confirmation bias. But guys, don't forget, we have, if you like the content, please, we have Buy Me a Cup of Coffee. Link to that is in the description as well on top of the YouTube channel. And as always, guys, stay safe.